and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this very exciting so today on the Friday the 10th of December, yes, it is Friday the 10th of December, and of course yesterday we had a very good Queensland Multicultural Council's annual dinner. We'll talk a little bit about that, but the glimpses I'll bring to you tomorrow. By that time we would have downloaded the clips and the photos. What a wonderful night, completely sold out event right in the venue, which I can actually see out of the window from here, the Golden Palace Chinese restaurant in the valley. Well, right now, moving on, what is happening today? We will be looking at some of this news. We'll have the Prime Minister joining in first, and of course then we will have an interview, very beautiful interview on the topical issues that's facing us today. And after that, of course, we will have the Daily India report, and we'll finish off with the functions and events happening in this weekend. Well, let's get this right in the road, and as I promised before, Prime Minister joining us right now.
And now we have taken the decision, based on the best possible medical advice through the TGA, that we'll be extending that vaccination program to 5 to 11-year-olds and giving parents the choice. As a parent, there are no more important decisions that you make than those you make about the health and well-being of your children. And we want to make sure that we have been one of the first countries, in North America, in the United States and Canada, having observed their experience and looked at their results, to be able to move to vaccinations for 5 to 11-year-olds. Now that will start on the 10th of January, and Greg Hunt and Professor Murphy will take you through the steps that we need to take between now and then. We'll be briefing Premiers and Chief Ministers on that further today when we meet this morning. And this is another important step forward in our vaccination program.
It is a very important step into that vaccination program, and kids are vulnerable as well. So, looking at the move, many people say this is, just a quick fix at the last minute, but, we can't leave any stone unturned when it comes to the well-being and security of our children. Well, this next news, where the Prime Minister is describing Gladys Berejiklian.
Gladys has been a dear friend over a long period of time, and she's served the people of New South Wales so great, and I've been pretty clear about what I've thought about her treatment. And she's made a decision to go forward into a new chapter of her life, and Jenny and I wish her all the very best of that. She's been a great friend to Jen and I, particularly over these last couple of years as we've worked together to combat that pandemic. New South Wales has done extraordinarily well, and she's going to go into a new chapter of her life. But we've got great female candidates in particular who are coming to stand in our team. Just yesterday, as Greg Hunt will know, I was down there with Steph Asher in Corangamite yesterday, and of course Dr. Fiona Martin standing here right next to me. So, Gladys has sort of blazed a trail, I think, for women in the Liberal Party, and so many of the great professional women who are coming forward and standing up as part of our team have been inspired by Gladys's achievements. So she's been a trailblazer. She's off to blaze a new trail now, but we wish her all the best for her future, and I know that she'll continue to provide tremendously strong support to me and my team, and I thank her very much for that.
And let's hear from her herself.
Just to say that I'm looking forward to a much less public life. I won't be contesting the federal seat of Warringah or for any other seat for that matter. I'm going in a different direction, and I'm looking forward to the opportunities that next year brings.
And of course, everyone's looking for new opportunities.
Over a long period of time, and she's served the people of New South Wales.
And of course, everyone's looking for opportunities and new opportunities. Well, last night, as I mentioned, that we had the Queensland Multicultural Council annual dinner, and we had this, all the thunder and storm, and while we were tucked away nicely, neatly inside, what was happening outside. Here's a quick look at the storms and the time-lapse photography of how it went over Brisbane. And as you can see from the clouds, it was quite severe, and right through it went like anything, and some people coming to the car park got completely drenched, but it was just a wonderful night at the Queensland Multicultural Council's annual dinner. While the storm was happening outside, we cooked up a storm inside. Well, moving on, right now, all the talk about this Omicron variant, how worried should we be?
Close to 90% of Australia's population aged 16 and over are now double vaccinated. Given that, how worried do we need to be about the new Omicron variant? Professor Sharon Lewin is the director of the Doherty Institute. Professor, Omicron's now been around for a few weeks. How much do we know at this stage about how likely or otherwise it is to cause serious illness or death?
The most important question we all have is, does it cause less or more or the same severity of disease as Delta? And we don't know the answer to that in full, but so far all the indications are that we're seeing milder disease with less chance of going to intensive care. So that's a very good sign, although the studies are all really very preliminary.
When do you think we'll have enough data where we can sort of take what you've just said there as, yep, that's exactly how it is?
Yeah, hard to say, though. The data that will come in will be quick. There's some very good systems, particularly in South Africa and the UK and other places that are recording high numbers. I'd say over the next literally weeks we'll have more data. Every day we're learning more, but within weeks we'll have a much more clearer idea about disease severity with Omicron.
If it is mild, people don't need to be too worried about their health if they're vaccinated. But against that backdrop, how effectively do 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine protect a person against the Omicron variant?
Well, we've just heard some data on that. Pfizer made an announcement of their results, not in publication, and a group in South Africa, their results just of laboratory testing. We don't know yet anything in the real world, which we will learn about, I'm sure, soon. But based on laboratory testing, the announcement from Pfizer said after 3 doses, so the first and second and the booster, there is sufficient antibodies on board to protect against Omicron. But both studies show that Omicron is a harder virus to neutralise in the laboratory. What does that mean in the clinic? We don't know yet. It might explain why people are more likely to get infected, but yet they don't get sick. And there are other parts of the immune system that determine whether someone lands up in hospital or not.
And do we have any knowledge yet about the other vaccines that we use in Australia, AstraZeneca and Moderna?
No, there's been no publications yet of the protection against Omicron from AstraZeneca, Moderna or Janssen, but I suspect it will be quite similar. All of them induce antibodies, high levels of antibodies protect you from infection, and it seems that you need higher levels on board to protect you from Omicron.
Australia's former Deputy Chief Health Officer Nick Coatsworth tweeted today, and he was urging some caution around the media reporting. He was saying that Omicron numbers shouldn't be reported separately from COVID case numbers or kind of overhyped. Is there an issue with media over-reporting of COVID that is creating unnecessary anxiety?
Well, I think people are on tenterhooks about a new variant, causing all sorts of things, and we all are hungry for the information. And I think at the moment we just don't have that information. I think we need to track Omicron to know what it's doing, but ultimately the actual measures that we use for Omicron or Delta, I suspect are going to be very similar.
Professor Lewin, thanks for your time.
Pleasure. Thanks very much, Lee.
So there you go. What do we know and how much do we know about this? And of course, there have been a lot of reports saying that this variant might as well be, what was needed to break the cycle, yet to, see what really happens out of there. Well, Pfizer are confident that, there would be a defense with this.
In a luxury hotel in downtown Washington, D.C., Australia's sick and tired Deputy Prime Minister is being closely watched.
George, just wait, please. Isn't it amazing when we do this, when you're trying to do this, you've got people ringing on the doors, you've got people trying to call you on the other phone.
A frustrated Barnaby Joyce fears he might not be home for Christmas. He's midway through a round-the-world trip where he's held multiple meetings with fellow ministers and believes he caught COVID-19 in the UK. Now he's isolating for the next 10 days.
Even now, James, to be quite frank, if it wasn't COVID, if COVID wasn't around, you'd think, everything's fine, just go to work. It's nothing too dramatic. I suppose being double vaccinated helps. I'm double vaccinated.
Back home, his diagnosis came as a shock.
I know Barnaby was really looking forward to what he was going to be doing over there.
I wish him and anyone who tests positive for COVID well. I hope that he's able to recover quickly.
It's important to remember that Mr Joyce's situation is not that unique. There are nearly 15,000 active COVID cases in Australia and more than 100,000 a day are being diagnosed in the US alone. The Omicron variant is spreading swiftly. Though pharmaceutical giant Pfizer says it has good news, preliminary tests suggest a third dose of its vaccine can be an effective defence.
And that's available now, so please go and get your booster.
But the World Health Organization is again declaring the doses could be better used elsewhere.
The boosters, unfortunately, are probably not the solution to this.
It warns increasing overall vaccination rates in both wealthy and third world countries is still the best way of limiting hospitalisations and deaths. Fortunately, more than 88% of Australians aged 16 and up have now had 2 doses. James Glenday, ABC News.
And of course, with the second dose, right now people are being urged to go and get that booster. Because there are some other variants that are now in the equation as well. So with the booster, your 2 plus the booster is the complete package. That means, well, that's what we think about right now. Well, right now, let's move on. It's Christmas, coming to Christmas as well. So what's going to happen with all the spending around Christmas? Australian household spending returns to a pre-COVID levels at the time of Christmas. The CommBank household spending intentions, the index for November 2021 released yesterday at its highest level since December 2019, recovering all the ground lost during COVID-19 period. So that is a pretty good sign. The index provides a monthly in-depth gauge of Australian consumer spending with 12 spending categories, revealing the areas most important to us. So during November 2021, consumer spending in Australia grew by 2.1%, and Australians have grown their savings to record levels during the pandemic. Solid gains in the transport, which is plus 21%, and in travel, plus 14%, in retail, plus 9.6%, and household services, plus 9.4%, were the main drivers of November's spending increase. So you can see the areas, transport and travel, of course, on the top there. Retail spending has risen 21% since the low point in August, and the largest gains in the department stores, meaning clothing, furniture, household equipment, electronic stores, household appliances, jewelry and watches, and pet shops. On the further positive note, households have accumulated approximately 240 billion in excess savings, money that is ready to be spent as Christmas approaches. So once again, we have had this discussion about where is this money coming from all of a sudden? How come people have the money? Well, simple as that, they have not been spending on a lot of overseas trips or even interstate trips. So people are staying put where they are, and hence the spending levels have come down, and with the spending levels coming down, the savings obviously grows up. So it balances the equation. One goes up, one comes down. And that is why now even at the local restaurants and all the local little resorts, you'll find that everything's booked out because people now have a bit of money. They have not been going around. Things are opening up a little bit, and people are making the best use of that little opportunity. And of course, when we talk about going away, a lot of people have, here in Queensland and Brisbane, quickly taken, short breaks, because they know once everything opens, the mad rush, as they call, will begin. But today, to discuss all of this, I have joining us via the phone line is Belinda, the senior economist, who discusses how Christmas shopping in retail will compare to last year and whether travel spending will continue to rise despite fears among the variant. Belinda has extensive experience in the financial market as an economist, and she has joined the Commonwealth Group in 2003 and her work primarily involves developing and communicating views on Australian economy and policy works. So once again, welcome to the show, Belinda.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it is wonderful that you could come and join us. So what does CommBank's data tell us about Christmas shopping trends? What do we know so far?
So our in-depth gauge of Australian consumer spending lifted again in November as we continue to see pent-up demand as restrictions have eased from those long Delta lockdowns. The index in November rose 2.1% and is now up 10% since that lockdown low in August 2021. So consumers are back spending again. We've seen big lifts in spending on travel, transport, retail and household services, and the trends are good as we head into that all-important Christmas shopping season.
Well, of course, that all-important Christmas shopping season, Belinda. So, Belinda, how do you expect that, the Christmas shopping retail will compare, say, if we compare it to last year?
Well, we certainly have seen a lift in spending in-store as restrictions have eased, but spending online also does remain elevated as well as consumers have really gotten on board with online spending. We've seen retail spending up 21% since that lockdown low in August, with spending more in department stores, on clothing, furniture, household equipment and appliances, and at jewellery stores. And based on this recent data, but also the large pool of household savings that we know is out there, certainly the signs are good for robust retail sales during the Christmas period.
Well, of course, during that period is when the savings can be used up. Well, right, Ram, so why do Australians do it this way?
So because we saw a fall in spending due to COVID restrictions, but income levels remained elevated, we've seen an accumulation of excess savings over the COVID-19 period. So CBA estimates that households have accumulated around $240 billion worth, and that money is ready to be spent during the Christmas period.
Okay, so will spending on travel still increase despite this fear and the concern that we have?
The easing in travel restrictions across the country has encouraged many Australians to put their long-awaited travel plans into action. So we saw travel spending intentions lift 15% in November. They're up 77% since August 2021. We're spending more on hotels, motels, resorts, airlines, travel agents, and airports as well. And while it's too early to tell the impact from this new variant, we are definitely watching developments closely, and given that pent-up demand out there, would expect that travel spending intentions should continue.
Okay, and of course, I think you are right on the dollar there with the your report and the expectation. And I think we can just sense that and feel that is going to happen. Well, of course, there is only so much we can discuss in this short interview that we have here. But again, thank you very much for all the things that you have said. Where can people go and get a little bit more information should they wish to find out a little bit more about this report?
So you can access our November report on www.commbank.com.au/HSI.
Well, Belinda, once again, thank you for being on the show and discussing this very, very important issue. And, of course, the findings of that report, which can be found on the website you've just mentioned. So, once again, thank you so much for being on the show.
It was great to be with you.
And ladies and gentlemen, that was Belinda. Thank you so much for being with the show. And as you can see, she quite humbly, presented that report to us. Well, right now it's time to go to our daily India report. And with that, let's welcome Ankita.
Welcome to the Daily India report that brings you glimpses of the changing India and the growing engagement of the Indian diaspora with India. In our first story, India's Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat is killed along with his wife and other officers in a helicopter crash. Condolences pour in from across the world.
India's Chief of All Forces, General Bipin Rawat, his wife and 11 other people have been killed after a military helicopter they were travelling in crashed in the southern state of Tamil Nadu. The Indian Air Force said the tragic accident took place near the town of Kannur at noon on December 8th. One survivor is being treated for his injuries in hospital. The Russian-made Mi-17 V5 helicopter was on its way from an Air Force base to the Defence Services Staff College when it crashed. The reason for the crash was not immediately known and the authorities have launched an investigation. The type of military transport helicopter that crashed is widely used in India by the VVIPs and army commanders when visiting defence locations. The Air Force said Group Captain Varun Singh survived but is critical and is being treated in a military hospital. General Rawat, 63, was appointed India's first ever Chief of Defence Staff in January 2019, bringing under him the Free Forces, the Army, the Navy and the Air Force. General Rawat had been in charge of a range of operations including in the Union Territory of Kashmir. India's Cabinet Security Committee held an emergency session chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The Prime Minister said that Rawat was an outstanding soldier and a true patriot who greatly contributed to modernizing the country's armed forces and security apparatus. Arch-rival Pakistan's Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa expressed his condolences on the tragic death of Rawat and his wife, its government said in a tweet. The defence chief hailed from a military family with several generations serving in the Indian Armed Forces. The general, who had 4 decades of service behind him, had commanded forces in Indian-administered Kashmir and along the line of actual control bordering China. In 2015, Rawat oversaw Indian surgical strikes into neighbouring Myanmar when para-commandos entered the country to attack Naga rebels who had ambushed and killed Indian troops.
Indian Cabinet approves 44,605 crore rupees Ken Betwa River Link project between 2 major rivers of Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh states. It was the dream of late Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee. The Union Cabinet of India, chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has approved the funding and implementation of the Ken Betwa Interlinking of Rivers project at a cost of 44,605 crore rupees or nearly $6 billion. The project will be completed in 8 years, generate 103 megawatt hydropower and 27 megawatt solar power. The Modi cabinet has approved central support of 39,317 crore rupees for the project, covering a grant of 36,290 crore rupees and a loan of 3,027 crore rupees. This project involves the transfer of water from Ken to the Betwa River through the construction of the Dodan Dam and a canal linking the 2 rivers, the Lower Ore Project, Kota Barrage and the Bina Complex Multi-Purpose Project. The project will provide annual irrigation to more than 1 million hectares, drinking water supply to a population of about 6.2 million and also generate 103 megawatt hydropower and 27 megawatt solar power. The project is proposed to be implemented in 8 years with state-of-the-art technology. India successfully test-fires air version of BrahMos cruise missile. India has successfully test-fired an air version of the BrahMos cruise missile from a Sukhoi 30 Mk-1 Russian fighter. The missile was tested from Integrated Test Range, Chandipur, off the coast of Odisha state on 8 December 2021. In this copybook flight, the missile launched from the aircraft followed the pre-planned trajectory meeting all mission objectives. The Indian Defence Ministry described the launch as a major milestone in the development of BrahMos since it paves the way for serial production of the aerial version of BrahMos missiles within India. BrahMos Aerospace was established in 1998. It specializes in producing cruise missiles and supporting equipment such as launchers and missile guidance systems. In 2018, the Indian Ministry of Defence signed a deal with the company on the rearmament of the Indian Air Force's Sukhoi Su-30 Mk-1 fighters with the BrahMos cruise missile system as part of the capacity building against long-range targets in the Indian Ocean. The BrahMos is a medium-range ramjet supersonic cruise missile that can be launched from submarines, ships, aircraft or land. It is notably one of the fastest supersonic cruise missiles in the world. BrahMos is a joint India-Russia venture between the DRDO and Russia's NPO, Mashinostroyenia, which together formed the BrahMos Aerospace. The missile derives its name from 2 rivers, the Brahmaputra in India and the Moskva in Russia.
On 7 December, India successfully test-fired the vertically launched short-range surface-to-air missile from the Chandipur-based ITR. The DRDO design system has been developed for the Indian Navy and can engage targets at a distance of around 15 kilometers.
Indian Air Force Chief warns that India could be attacked on all fronts.
Indian Air Chief Marshal Vivek Ram Chaudhary has warned that the Indian Air Force and the other wings of the Indian Armed Forces have to be prepared for attacks from China and Pakistan on the full spectrum from the military to the economy. He said China poses a significant long-term challenge to India's strategic goals. The IAF chief further said that it should be made clear to the world that today's India has the capability and will to respond at a level that we deem appropriate. Chaudhary underlined that IAF needs to be rapidly modernized, expand its fleet and improve indigenous manufacturing capabilities. Speaking at the 18th Subrata Mukherjee seminar in Delhi, Chaudhary said that Pakistani armed forces have not only formulated a new concept of war fighting but have also acquired and equipped themselves with the latest technology, aircraft besides upgrading their defense capabilities. Strategically, India is making a transition from fighting a predominantly defensive war to adopting a more aggressive approach for an offensive defense under the nuclear umbrella. The IAF chief said that China's hegemonic and entrapping policies can provide opportunities for India to leverage in trade and military domains.
Indian farmers to formally call off protest on 9 December as Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government agrees to their demands. After 15 months of relentless protests, Indian farmers are calling off their agitation on 9 December 2021 as the 3 controversial farm laws have been repealed and the government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi has agreed to meet their demands. Finally, the farmers wanted a legal guarantee for minimum support price. This demand was met and they accepted a second draft proposal from the government that includes assurances on MSP and withdrawal of police cases against them. Thousands of farmers camping out around Delhi will be going back home. The stand down comes after a stunning series of U-turns by the government. A day ago, a panel of 5 senior farmer leaders met in Delhi to discuss a fresh proposal offered by the government, which included assurances that the police cases against thousands of farmers in connection with the farm laws agitations and over stubble burning will be immediately suspended. The government sent one offer on December 7th evening that included assurances of a committee being formed to examine the MSP demand on an assurance that the farmers will end their protests before the police cases were dropped. However, the farmers indicated they were reluctant to do. On the question of the constitution of the MSP committee, the farmers have emphasized that only members of the Samyukt Kisan Morcha should be chosen. As part of the 75th anniversary of independence celebrations, Indian Council for Cultural Relations hosted Gen Next leaders. Young parliamentarian, media persons and leaders from different walks of life from 75 countries will visit and witness India interact with Indian youth. On the occasion of 75 years of independence, the Indian Council for Cultural Relations has launched a program to host young parliamentarians and leaders from 75 countries to showcase India's vibrant democracy and culture. The first batch of 19 young parliamentarians and leaders from 8 countries visited India from November 25th to December 2nd. ICCR President and Rajya Sabha member Dr. Vinay Sahasrabuddhe said ICCR had started the Gen Next Democracy Network program. The young participants will get a comprehensive overview of India's democratic traditions, cultural heritage and development initiatives. Such leaders met the leaders in the country at the centre and state levels. Young parliamentarians from Poland, Sri Lanka, Jamaica, Bhutan, Malaysia, Sweden, Tanzania and Uzbekistan were part of the first batch of the leaders who visited Gujarat state, where they met the state ministers, besides travelling to Anand to see the functioning of Amul milk cooperatives.
It is extremely important because India happily enjoys a huge amount of goodwill world over. But goodwill, although important, is not enough. We have to convert this goodwill into a proper understanding about India. And one of the facets of understanding India is India's democratic traditions, democratic culture. We are not just a political democracy, we are a spiritual democracy first, and now we are moving towards becoming a social and economic democracy.
The delegates who have been invited by the ICCR will also share the democratic ideas being followed in their own countries. The event emphasized India's rich democratic traditions and conveyed to the world that democracy in India is neither just about periodic elections, nor about voter turnouts, nor a governance mechanism. The central objective of India's democracy is to enable every person to have a say in deciding about the greater collective social worth. Bollywood star Suniel Shetty wants to cast son Ahan in Gopi Kishin remake. Bollywood star Suniel Shetty is a proud father as his son Ahan is bagging raving reviews in Ahan's debut film Tadap. The Bollywood's disco dancer says he would want to see his son starring in a remake of his own film Gopi Kishin 2 if it's made. Gopi Kishin is an action comedy film released in 1994. It saw Sunil in a double role and also featured actresses Shilpa Shirodkar and Karishma Kapoor. So, Sunil wonders if it's a little too early for Ahan to try his hands in other genres. Tadap, presented by Fox Star Studios, produced by Sajid Nadiawala, co-produced by Fox Star Studios and directed by Milan Luthria, was released on December 3rd. That's all for this bulletin of Daily India Report. Thank you for watching.
And thank you very much for that presentation, Ankita. That's the very tragic news coming out of the helicopter crash, and our condolences there as well. Right now it's time to look at some of the functions and events that might be taking place in Brisbane. And ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for you in this segment here. And it's been wonderful having your company on this Friday the 10th of December. And Brisbane is 26 degrees and sunny at the moment. Well, as I mentioned before, tomorrow we'll have the weekend roundup at 9 a.m. right here. Until then, it's goodbye. And don't forget that we have quite a few wonderful programs lined up for Christmas. Oh, yes, by the way, before I forget, the new issue of Brisbane Indian Times is out and about, so you can go and pick them up at your favorite outlets. And if you ever have problems getting copies in your area, please do contact our office and we'll make arrangements that, or guide you to where you'd be able to pick up the hard copies. Of course, the online version is available for everyone, but people still like the touch and feel, actually pick up a newspaper, to read a newspaper, rather than just watching it online. Well, of course, both the mediums are there. So if you do have any problems getting your hands on the hard copies, please do contact our office. But the December edition, the Christmas edition is out and about, so please do pick up your copy. Until tomorrow, it's goodbye from me. Wonderful to have your company.